The Lagos skyline glittered like a constellation of ambition and wealth, but on the 42nd floor of Vance Global Holdings, Chukwudi Is did not sit behind a glass desk surveying his empire. Tonight, he was someone else entirely. Tolu Adebayo, a quiet new employee in the data department, slipped through the office doors. His clothes were plain, his glasses unassuming, and his gait humble. No one would guess that this unremarkable young man was the billionaire who controlled billions, the man who had built empires with a touch of his hand. Chukwudi moved with deliberate slowness, observing the office like a hawk hidden beneath a soft disguise. Managers backed orders at employees who flinched at every glance. Some workers whispered in corners, others scurried down corridors, trying not to be noticed. He smiled faintly. This human theater was what he wanted to see. Not the polished boardroom meetings. Not the glossy press conferences. Real people, real reactions, real hearts. And then he saw her. Adana Nwosu, a junior analyst with eyes sharp enough to notice mistakes and a heart big enough to care anyway. She bent over a spreadsheet, muttering under her breath as if the numbers had betrayed her. But when she caught his glance and smiled politely, there was no pretense in her expression. If the CEO actually cared, this would be the best company in Lagos, she whispered to a colleague without realizing he heard her. Chukwudi's chest tightened. She had no idea. And yet, even in her oblivion, she spoke a truth he had longed to hear. He adjusted the ring on his finger, the ancient Is family heirloom, pulsing faintly against his skin. It was more than jewelry. The ring sensed intentions, the faintest current of loyalty and deceit, and tonight it pulsed with a soft warning. Someone in the company was hiding something. Someone dangerous. Chukwudi glanced around. Shadows clung to the corners of the office. The faint click of heels echoed too deliberately, the hum of the air conditioning masking whispers he could almost hear. He froze. A figure moved across the empty hallway beyond the glass walls, deliberate and careful. The shadow didn't belong to any employee he had seen today. Someone was watching. Tolu, or rather, Chukwudi, held his breath. The thrill of the disguise, the secrecy, the invisible power coursing through him, it was intoxicating. But danger, he realized, was rarely polite. And tonight, it had already arrived. The shadow paused, then vanished around the corner, leaving only a faint chill in its wake. Chukwudi's lips curved into a calm, calculated smile. So the game begins, he thought. The honest heart. The office felt quieter in the early hours of the morning, the kind of stillness that made every small sound echo like a warning. Tolu Adebayo sat at his desk, eyes scanning lines of data that seemed perfectly normal to everyone else, but to him, subtle inconsistencies leapt out like tiny cracks in glass. Adana Nwosu entered quietly, a stack of papers in her hands, her brow furrowed in that familiar way he had begun to notice. "Morning, Tolu," she said softly, setting the papers down. "Did you manage to finish the Smithson report?" He smiled faintly, adjusting his glasses, careful to maintain the unassuming air of a new employee. "Yes," he said, his voice calm, "but I noticed some figures don't add up. I corrected them and flagged the anomalies." Adana's eyes lit up. You actually checked." "Most people just copy and paste whatever they are given." "Thank you." Tolu felt a warmth he wasn't used to in boardrooms or luxury offices. Real gratitude. Real honesty. He wanted to tell her who he really was, to let her see the truth behind the quiet, ordinary exterior. But he couldn't, not yet. The wrong word could ruin everything. Then came the first real sign of trouble. A spreadsheet in his department flickered oddly on the screen. Numbers shifted, accounts mismatched, transactions appeared and disappeared like smoke. A small act of sabotage, but deliberate. Someone had access to more than they should. Tolu's pulse quickened, but his face remained calm. He leaned back, observing the room like a chessboard. Every click of a keyboard, every shuffle of papers, every glance exchanged between employees, he catalogued them all. Adana noticed him watching, tilting her head. "You're always looking, aren't you? Always thinking." Tolu smiled faintly. "You notice things when you care." She smiled back, unaware of the layers beneath his words. Then the shadow returned. A figure moved silently past the glass walls at the far end of the hallway. Not an employee. Not security. Someone deliberate, patient, waiting. Tolu's fingers twitched near the ring. He had no doubt now, danger was inside the building. Someone was testing him, probing the company, and perhaps, watching him more closely than he realized. Adana glanced toward the hallway, frowning. "Did you see that?" Tolu shook his head. "Probably just a maintenance worker," he said, his tone smooth, almost casual. But inside, he knew the truth, the game had begun. And this time, the pieces were moving faster than he had anticipated. The first threat. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the office as Tolu Adebayo moved quietly between desks. Each step was deliberate, each glance measured. He had spent days observing, listening, and tracing patterns, small anomalies that most would dismiss as clerical errors. But to him, they screamed sabotage. It started with the numbers, misfiled accounts, missing invoices, a sudden spike in transactions that didn't make sense. Whoever was behind it was methodical, clever, and bold. Tolu crouched beside his workstation, opening a secure system only he could access. The screen revealed the culprit, or at least, a piece of the puzzle. Someone inside the company was stealing millions, slowly, almost imperceptibly. And that was just the beginning. He needed to act, but carefully. Any mistake could expose him. Any slip could put the company, and Adana, at risk. Speaking of her, she approached with her usual calm determination. "Tolu, I've been reviewing the numbers you flagged. There's something off. I think someone's tampering with the files. But I don't know who." Tolu felt a flicker of admiration. She had instinct, courage, and intelligence, qualities he hadn't seen in many adults, let alone employees. "Stay close," he said softly. "Don't trust anyone you're not certain of." Adana frowned. "You sound serious." "I am." The office seemed ordinary to anyone else, but Tolu noticed the subtle movements, a shadow pausing behind a frosted glass, a hand lingering too long over a locked door, the quiet shuffle of someone watching from a distance. He followed the trail to the accounting department, where a junior staffer appeared to be working late. Tolu's instinct screamed danger. He approached silently, the ring on his finger pulsing again, warning him of deceit. "Working late?" Tolu asked casually, hiding the steel in his tone. The staffer froze, glancing nervously at the screen. "Oh, yeah. Just finishing up some reports." Tolu's eyes narrowed slightly. Something about the movement didn't match the story. The subtle twitch of a finger, the hesitation in a glance, it was enough. Before he could press further, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "I see you, Tolu. But you're too late. The game has begun." Chills ran down his spine. Someone was inside, someone who knew his disguise, or at least knew enough to send a warning. Adana, unaware of the message, leaned over his desk. "Who's sending text at this hour?" Tolu smiled faintly, his eyes hardening. "No one we need to worry about, yet." But he knew the truth. The first threat was no longer subtle. The game had escalated. And someone, somewhere in the shadows, was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Growing closer. The office lights dimmed late in the evening, leaving long shadows stretching across the polished floors. Most employees had gone home, but Tolu Adebayo remained at his desk, reviewing reports and tracing the first hints of sabotage he had uncovered. Adana appeared without knocking, holding a mug of steaming coffee. "I figured you could use this," she said softly, placing it on his desk. Her dark eyes reflected concern and something more, something he felt but did not allow himself to name. "Thank you," Tolu said, his fingers brushing hers as he picked up the cup. He felt the warmth spread through him, more than just from the coffee. They worked side by side in silence for a while, the quiet hum of computers filling the room. Then Adana broke the silence, her voice hesitant. "I don't know why, but you're different from anyone I've ever worked with. You notice things no one else does. You actually care." Tolu looked at her, the words hitting him deeper than he expected. "I notice because I have to," he replied softly. "And sometimes, because I want to." Her eyes lingered on his face for a moment too long, and he felt the familiar pull of something dangerous, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Love. But even as warmth filled him, the ring on his finger paused sharply. The warning was sudden, urgent. Someone had entered the building. Adana noticed his change immediately. "What is it?" "Nothing," he said smoothly, though his eyes flicked toward the hallway. The shadows seemed thicker, heavier tonight. Then came the subtle sound, a soft shuffle, barely audible, but enough for him to recognize it. Someone was there. Watching. Waiting. Adana's voice trembled slightly. "Tolu, do you think it's—" He cut her off, his tone calm but commanding. "Stay here. Don't move." He slipped silently toward the far hallway, every step measured. The air was tense, almost electric. And then he saw it, a figure slipping past the frosted glass, disappearing down a stairwell as if it had never existed. Tolu clenched his fist. Whoever this was, they were inside the company, watching, testing him, daring him. Returning to Adana, he forced a smile. "Probably just a late-night cleaner," he said, though the light tasted bitter on his tongue. But Tolu knew better. The game was no longer subtle. And tonight, it had become personal. Because the shadow knew more than he had expected. And soon, that knowledge would bring danger closer than he, or Adana, could imagine. The morning sun streamed through the glass walls of Vance Global Holdings, but Tolu Adebayo didn't notice. His eyes were fixed on the reports before him, figures that no ordinary employee would question. Except these numbers didn't add up. Not by a single naira. A subtle alarm went off in his mind. The sabotage wasn't random. It was deliberate. Someone with access, authority, and knowledge was slowly siphoning funds, hiding their trail under layers of deception. He leaned back, glancing toward Adana, who was immersed in her own work. "Morning," she said casually, unaware of the storm brewing just beyond her gaze. "Morning," Tolu replied. His voice was calm, but his mind raced. He pulled up the transaction logs and traced them back step by step. The pattern was undeniable. The anomalies all pointed toward the boardroom, someone at the highest levels of the company. A cold thrill ran through him. The betrayal wasn't from a low-level employee. It wasn't from someone desperate or reckless. This was calculated, precise, and dangerous. Tolu knew he needed a plan. Acting openly would tip off the traitor. He needed a trap. By mid-afternoon, he had set it. Using the company's secure system, he created a decoy transaction, one designed to lure the saboteur into revealing themselves. All the while, he kept his eyes on Adana, ensuring she stayed safe, unaware that she was now part of a game far bigger than she realized. Hours passed, tension building with each tick of the clock. Then, just as the office emptied for a late meeting, a shadow moved across the boardroom floor. Tolu's pulse quickened. He watched as someone entered the system remotely. The decoy transaction had been triggered. And then, a small smile appeared on the figure's lips. Tolu's jaw tightened. He recognized the subtle gestures of someone confident in their immunity, someone who believed they were untouchable. A sudden ping alerted him to a message appearing on his phone. Clever, but predictable. The words were typed with precision, deliberately meant to unnerve. Tolu's eyes narrowed. He now knew the traitor wasn't just skilled, they were personal, close, and fearless. Adana approached quietly, sensing the shift in the room. "Tolu, what's happening?" He forced a calm expression. "Nothing. Just paperwork." But inside, his mind raced. The first real move had been made. The traitor had revealed themselves partially, and the game had escalated far beyond subtle hints or warnings. Tolu's eyes flicked to the shadows outside the glass walls. Someone was watching, waiting, knowing more than they should. And he realized, with a chill, that the danger was no longer about money. It was about control. Power. And the secret someone would kill to protect. The office had an uneasy calm that morning, as if even the walls were holding their breath. Tolu Adebayo moved quietly through the rows of desks, his mind replaying the decoy trap from the day before. The traitor had taken the bait, but only partially. Whoever it was, they had experience, cunning, and confidence that unnerved even him. He returned to his desk, opening a private ledger hidden deep within the company's secure system. Step by step, he traced the anomalies, connecting dots that most would never notice. Each figure, each misfiled report, painted a picture of deliberate sabotage, orchestrated from inside the highest ranks. Adana appeared quietly, leaning against his desk. You're tense, she observed, her dark eyes studying him with unflinching honesty. Something's going on, isn't it? Tolu forced a casual smile. Just paperwork. Nothing to worry about. She shook her head, unconvinced. You never act like this. You notice things, more than anyone I've met. Her words were a double-edged sword, comforting, yet dangerous. The closer he allowed her to see him, the harder it would be to maintain the disguise he had perfected for months. He cleared his throat. Adana, stay alert. Not everything is as it seems here. Her gaze softened. Are you talking about the numbers again, or something else? He hesitated. The truth was heavier than he could share. Both, he said finally. And sometimes, the danger comes from people you least expect. Her eyes softened. Then let me help, she said quietly. I don't care about the title. I just want to do what's right. Tolu felt a pound of emotion he hadn't expected, admiration, trust, something like hope. He wanted to tell her the truth. But the risk was too great. Then came the subtle warning from the ring. A pulse, sharp and urgent, made his fingers twitch. Someone in the company, someone he trusted, was hiding more than just greed. A new alert blinked on his screen. Another suspicious transaction. This one, much larger, moved through a seemingly innocuous account, one tied to a board member. Tolu's eyes narrowed. Whoever this was, they weren't just stealing money. They were strategically dismantling the company, piece by piece. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. And then a whisper of a thought crossed his mind. What if the mastermind is closer to me than I ever imagined? Adana looked over his shoulder, sensing the tension. Tolu, you're hiding something. But I don't know what. Just promise me you'll be careful. He gave her a faint smile, hiding the storm inside. I promise. But as he watched her return to her desk, he realized the truth, the game had only just begun. And the next move would come from someone who could destroy everything, including the fragile trust he had built with Adana. The confrontation. The late-night hum of the office felt like a pulse in Tolu Adebayo's veins. He moved silently through the corridors, each step measured, each glance calculated. The decoy transactions had yielded results, but now it was time to confront the traitor directly. He paused outside the accounting department, where a faint light flickered under the door. The air smelled faintly of coffee and fear. Whoever had been tampering with the company's accounts had returned, and they hadn't expected him to be waiting. Tolu. A voice quivered from inside. A junior staffer. Or something far more dangerous. He pushed the door open, every muscle coiled. A figure froze at the desk, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The soft glow of the monitor revealed a brief flash of recognition in their eyes before fear overtook it. You've been careful, Tolu said, voice calm, deceptively gentle. But not careful enough. The figure flinched, then smirked, both despite the tension. And you think you can stop me? Do you know who I really am? Tolu's eyes narrowed. Every instinct screamed that this person was more than they appeared, confident, experienced, and dangerously cunning. I don't need to know your name, he replied. I just need to know that you won't destroy everything I've built. A laugh, soft and chilling, echoed through the room. You think you control the game. But you're only a pawn, Tolu. The words hit him like a knife. Someone was orchestrating this from the shadows, manipulating events so carefully that even he, a billionaire in disguise, had been forced to follow their lead. Suddenly, the office lights flickered, and the figure vanished, disappearing through a back exit that should have been locked. Tolu's heart raced. Whoever this was, they had access to more than just accounts, they knew the building, the systems, and perhaps even him. He leaned against the desk, breathing steadily, forcing calm. But the pulse on his finger told him what he already feared. The traitor was closer than he imagined, and bolder than he anticipated. Adana's voice came softly through the doorway. Tolu. I thought I heard something. Are you okay? He straightened, forcing a faint smile. I'm fine. Just a late-night problem. But inside, Tolu knew the truth. The first confrontation had shown him only the edge of the storm. And the shadow orchestrating it all was watching, waiting, and planning something far bigger. As he glanced out of the office window, the Lagos skyline glittered deceptively peaceful, but Tolu felt a chill. The game had escalated. And he wasn't just fighting for the company anymore, he was fighting for control, survival, and the woman who had unknowingly captured his heart. The office had emptied for the night, leaving only Tolu Adebayo and Adana Mosu in the soft glow of the fluorescent lights. The quiet hum of computers and the occasional clack of a keyboard created a fragile cocoon around them. Adana leaned against his desk, arms crossed, eyes searching. "You've been distant lately," she said softly. "Something's on your mind. I can feel it." Tolu looked at her, his heart tightening. He wanted to tell her everything, to reveal that he wasn't just Tolu, the quiet assistant she trusted, but Chukwudi is, the man who controlled the very empire she worked for. But he couldn't. "Not yet. I'm just thinking about work," he said, forcing a calm smile. "The company, it's facing some challenges, that's all." Her gaze softened, but she pressed on. "Then let me help. I don't care about the title. I just want to do what's right." Tolu felt a pound of emotion he hadn't expected, admiration, trust, something like hope. He wanted to tell her the truth. But the risk was too great. Then came the subtle warning from the ring. A pause, sharp and urgent, made his fingers twitch. Someone in the company, someone he trusted, was hiding more than just greed. A new alert blinked on his screen. Another suspicious transaction. This one, much larger, moved through a seemingly innocuous account, one tied to a board member. Tolu's eyes narrowed. Whoever this was, they weren't just stealing money. They were strategically dismantling the company, piece by piece. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. And then a whisper of a thought crossed his mind. What if the mastermind is closer to me than I ever imagined? Adana looked over his shoulder, sensing the tension. "Tolu, you're hiding something. But I don't know what. Just promise me you'll be careful." He gave her a faint smile, hiding the storm inside. "I promise." But as he watched her return to her desk, he realized the truth. The game had only just begun, and the next move would be lethal. The boardroom was silent, the kind of silence that pressed down on every shoulder and made hearts pound faster. Employees, executives, and managers alike had gathered for an emergency meeting. Rumors had been swirling all day, numbers missing, transactions manipulated, trust broken. Tolu Adebayo walked to the front, calm, collected, and impossibly ordinary, or so everyone thought. But as he looked out at the room, he felt the familiar pulse of the ring against his finger, a warning and a reminder. Tonight, nothing would stay hidden. He cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have something to tell you." Whispers rippled through the room. Eyes narrowed, murmurs bounced off the glass walls. "I am not who you think I am," he said, his voice steady, carrying the weight of authority that no ordinary assistant could ever possess. He removed his glasses, letting the light fall on his face. "I am Chukwudi Is, CEO and owner of Vance Global Holdings." The room went silent. Shock etched every face. Employees gasped, some dropped papers, others stared wide-eyed. Adana froze, her hand covering her mouth. "You've been working with me, under my disguise," Chukwudi continued, pacing slowly. "Not to deceive you, but to see the truth. To understand loyalty, honesty, and who truly cares about this company." Adana's eyes searched his, a storm of emotions swirling, betrayal, confusion, admiration, and something else she hadn't expected, a deep, undeniable affection. Chukwudi ignored the murmurs, his attention on the subtle shifts among the board members. He knew now who had orchestrated the sabotage, who had tried to manipulate the company from within. The final pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. "And now," he said, his voice hardening, "I know who has been behind this. You've tried to hide in shadows, manipulating the company and putting lives at risk. But the game is over." A tense pause filled the room. Eyes darted nervously. Some employees began whispering urgently, sensing the confrontation that was about to come. Adana stepped forward, her voice shaking slightly. "Chukwudi. I don't know what to think. Why didn't you tell me?" He reached for her hand, gentle and reassuring. "Because if I had, you might not have been safe. But now, you know the truth." The lights flickered suddenly. A faint shadow moved along the back wall, unseen by most, but not by him. The mastermind, the true orchestrator of the sabotage, was watching, smiling, and waiting. Chukwudi's jaw tightened. "This isn't over," he whispered under his breath. And from the shadows, a voice, calm and chilling, echoed softly. "You've revealed yourself, but you still haven't won, Chukwudi. The real game is just beginning." Every eye in the room went wide. Adana clutched his arm, heart racing. And Chukwudi realized, with a cold certainty, that the true threat, the mastermind, had always been closer than he ever imagined. The office was eerily quiet, but the tension was thick enough to choke on. Chukwudi stood at the center of the boardroom, Adana at his side, both aware that the true threat had yet to reveal itself. The shadows in the far corner shifted. A figure stepped forward, tall, composed, and unmistakably calculating. It was Obinna Icom, one of the most respected members of the board. His smile was slow, deliberate, almost amused. "Bravo, Chukwudi," Obinna said, his voice smooth like silk, yet laced with menace. "You've played your little game perfectly. But you underestimated me, and the lengths I'm willing to go." Chukwudi's pulse quickened, but his expression remained calm. He had known for weeks that someone at the highest level was orchestrating the sabotage. And now, the mastermind was standing before him, testing him directly. "You've risked everything for this company," Obinna continued, stepping closer. "But you've also risked her." His gaze flicked toward Adana. "Do you really think your little disguise could protect her from what comes next?" Adana instinctively stepped closer to Chukwudi, her hand brushing against his. "Leave him alone," she said firmly, her eyes blazing with courage. Chukwudi placed a hand over hers, reassuring. "I've got this," he said softly, though inside, every instinct screamed that the stakes had never been higher. Obinna's eyes glimmered. "You see, Chukwudi, this isn't just about money. It's about control, power, loyalty, and proving who truly deserves it. You've revealed yourself, yes, but the real game, that has only begun." Suddenly, the lights flickered and the monitors around the room flashed with real-time financial chaos, transactions reversing, accounts emptied, false alerts screaming across every screen. Obinna had planted multiple layers of sabotage that even Chukwudi hadn't anticipated. Chukwudi's eyes narrowed, feeling the familiar pulse of the ring against his skin. It was more than magic, it was instinct, intuition, and inherited strategy. He leaned toward Obinna. "You've underestimated loyalty. And you've underestimated me. You may control systems, but I control the people who actually make this company work. And they will follow me." A tense silence fell. Every board member, every employee, felt it, the final showdown between two forces that had been circling each other for months. Obinna smiled coldly. "We'll see, Chukwudi. We'll see. The first move was yours. The next is mine." As he retreated into the shadows, the message was clear, the battle wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Adana turned to Chukwudi, her hand still in his. You're really him. The CEO. All this time." He pulled her close, voice low, almost a whisper. "Yes. And I couldn't have done it without you." But even as they shared that fragile moment of triumph and relief, the ring paused again, a faint, ominous warning. Chukwudi knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that the mastermind's next move would come faster, smarter, and far more dangerous than anything he had faced before. He looked out the window at the Lagos skyline, glittering deceptively peaceful in the night. "This," he whispered to himself, "is only the beginning." And somewhere, in the dark corners of the city, Obinna Icom watched, smiling, plotting the next move in a game that had only just begun. Epilogue, a new dawn. The city of Lagos stretched beneath the early morning sun, golden light reflecting off the skyscrapers. Vans Global Holdings was alive again, buzzing with energy, employees moving with renewed purpose. The sabotage had been contained, the rogue transactions reversed, and the company was secure, for now. Chukwudi stood in his office, looking out over the city. Beside him, Adana Nwosu rested her hand on his arm. She had forgiven the deception, trusting him not just as the CEO, but as the man she had come to love. "We survived," she said softly, her eyes meeting his. "Yes," Chukwudi replied, voice calm but resolute. "But survival is only the beginning." Power and loyalty are tested every day, and I can't let my guard down. Adana smiled, a mixture of admiration and amusement. You always were dramatic. He chuckled lightly. Maybe. But some things, some battles, are worth it. The office phone rang. He glanced at it and then back at Adana. Another problem? She asked with a teasing smirk. Perhaps, he said, eyes narrowing. Or perhaps it's a warning that the real game is still out there. The ring on his finger paused faintly, reminding him of the unseen threads of power, loyalty, and betrayal that ran through his life. Somewhere, the mastermind, the shadow behind the sabotage, was still watching, waiting. Chukwudi took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle comfortably on his shoulders. He had faced betrayal, danger, and deception, but he had also discovered something stronger: love, trust, and the strength to lead with heart and mind together. He turned to Adana, smiling with quiet determination. Whatever comes next, we face it together. She squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with conviction. Together. And as the morning sun bathed the city in gold, Chukwudi knew one undeniable truth: the empire was safe, for now, but the game would never truly end. A shadow stirred in the distance, unseen by anyone but him. The faintest smile touched his lips. Let them come.